What is going on, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Subhuman Rants. So today's video, I'm going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the Star Wars prequel trilogy. I don't have the fancy Star Wars background today. I've been saving way too many pictures to do that. Pretty soon, I'm probably just going to go to my same basic, boring, whatever's behind me background. But anyways, let's stop wasting time on that. So the Star Wars prequels. They get so much hate, which again, I talked about it in one of my last videos. That's kind of going away now. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of giving a lot of praise to the prequels. Again, it's probably just because they really didn't like the sequel trilogy that much. But the prequel trilogy is so important in my mind. And it all starts really with The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace gets a lot of hate. Of course, everyone really doesn't like Jar Jar that much, which, in Jar Jar's defense, Star Wars, and I might get flack on this, Star Wars has always been a family movie type of thing, to where that's why you don't see any F-bombs getting dropped, anything like that. But the original series, the original trilogy didn't really get something like Jar Jar. Jar Jar is meant to be the comic relief for the kids, not for the adults. The adults, they're going to have more subtle stuff in there, but Jar Jar is for the kids that are watching. But going forward, the prequels. Now, one of the most important things, and I've kind of alluded to it in past videos, has been the importance of the Duel of Fates. The Duel of Fates was not supposed to be just this duel between Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan. The duel was actually for the fate of Anakin Skywalker. Now, there's an interview, I believe it was Dave Filoni. I don't remember which channel has it posted on here. If I can find it, I might put it in the description for the video. But the whole point of the Duel of Fates was to fight over what would become of Anakin. So Qui-Gon Jinn, going into it, Qui-Gon, in the short time that he spent with Anakin, became Anakin's father figure. That's why, I mean, you do have that scene in Attack of the Clones where Anakin says, you know, Obi-Wan, you're the closest thing I have to a father. But when you look at Revenge of the Sith, Anakin says, or Obi-Wan says, you were my brother. They're closer to brothers, and that's the problem. That's honestly why I believe Anakin does eventually fall to the dark side. It's not about, it is about Padme, but the whole thing is that would not have most likely happened had Anakin had the teachings of Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon was definitely a lot more tenured in the Jedi, for the Jedi. So Qui-Gon definitely, he would have been a better teacher for Anakin. He would have been stricter. He would have definitely, honestly, I believe would have made Anakin a lot calmer and a lot less sensitive to his own emotions. Qui-Gon was, he was a good mentor. I mean, but Obi-Wan wasn't prepared. I think that's kind of the biggest thing with this. So because Qui-Gon loses and Qui-Gon dies on Naboo during the Duel of Fates, and Obi-Wan survives, Obi-Wan ends up becoming the mentor to Anakin. But Obi-Wan was still a Padawan. Right up until after that fight, he was never knighted by the Jedi before that. So in my mind, Obi-Wan was not ready to take on an apprentice. He didn't get to spend time as a Jedi Knight doing missions really without his master. I mean, he might have had a few missions if you look at some of the books and stuff like that, but he wasn't truly on his own yet. So he couldn't really instruct a Jedi and teach a 9-year-old boy about this religion properly. And I believe that's kind of the downfall of Anakin. But if your parents act more like your friend, you're not going to get that kind of strict structure that comes with like traditional parenting. And I'm not trying to make a comment on parenting. I don't really care about that. But my point is, he has his brother, this brother figure, who's there to help him, guide him along throughout this, pretty much throughout the most of his life at this point. And instead of having this father figure that is going to be strict and teach him what he needs to be taught. So I believe that's kind of the downfall uh, of the prequels, is that stuff like this wasn't brought properly up to everyone. You have to think about it. This isn't something that they actually, like a character says during dialogue. This is something that you have to think about while you're watching. You have to think, oh, so this is why it's not like that, instead of just having them tell you why it's not like that. But going forward, Attack of the Clones, it did have its issues. I'm not going to lie on that. But it definitely had some good parts. I mean, the whole back and forth between Anakin and Padme, that was, I believe that was definitely needed to see this other side of Anakin. Um, but I think the biggest line that gets so far taken out of context in that movie is the whole "I hate sand" dialogue. A lot of fans watch that and they cringe and they're like, "That is so stupid." But the way that I see it, so the reason why it was put in there is to explain why Luke is safe on Tatooine in the first movie. Anakin does not like sand. He hates Tatooine. I don't think it's really too much to do with sand. I think it's mostly to do with the fact that he grew up as a slave on this desert planet. It's not like the sand that you go to the beach and whatever. This is completely different. It is hot. It is, it's just, I'm having a hard time explaining it, but the whole point of that is to describe, okay, so, well, if they brought if they brought Luke to Tatooine, this planet where Anakin grew up, they kept the last name Skywalker. I'm not going to get too much into this because I want to make another video on this, but they kept the last name Skywalker. Why was Luke safe? Anakin, he didn't go to Tatooine for any reason, didn't feel the need to. Well, that's the reason why. He despises that place. He grew up on that planet. He was a slave on that planet. And then when he returned 10 years later, his mother was killed on that planet. That planet is so painful to him, he's not going to go there. But that is the reason in my mind why they add that line in there, is to describe why Anakin would not go back to Tatooine. But there's a lot of, it's building, it's trying to explain stuff that happened in the original trilogy. I believe that's kind of the biggest reason for the prequels. I mean, yeah, you could say, well, that's what a prequel is, but it's not just telling a different story. It is trying to connect all of the pieces. Another big complaint that I see is the complaint of it's too political. There's all this political mumbo jumbo going on, and it's boring. But it's another big reason to show you what is actually going on and how the galaxy is kind of the shape of the galaxy at this point. I mean, look at the original trilogy. It is an empire. It is a strict. They do have the Senate at the beginning of the movies, but it doesn't last very long. The problem is the Empire is pretty much in control of everything at this point, and they are draining money. They're draining resources from the entire galaxy. What's prevalent with this is, I don't know if I've said this before, but I do talk about it quite a bit, is look at the way the ships look and look at the way that everything really looks throughout Star Wars. You look at the original trilogy and even the sequel trilogy, everything looks so run down. It looks like it's beat up. It's almost like you drive through a neighborhood and all the cars are, 20 years old. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's the point of, okay, the economy right now is not doing too good on all of these planets, especially in the Outer Rim, because all the money is going to the Imperial military, and it's going to these Imperial science and technological research, and it's doing that sort of thing. So, but when you look at the prequels, especially Padme's ship, I mean, oh my, the thing is almost pure chrome. I mean, you look at it, you can get blinded by the reflection from the sun. It is, everything looks almost pristine and almost brand new. And the reason for that is to describe that the Republic era was a golden age for pretty much, not as much the people on the Outer Rim, because as you can see in Tatooine, they're still going through quite a bit because they're they kind of don't have as good of control on the outer rim planets as they do on the inner rim. But for the most part, the galaxy is a lot better off during the prequels, and that's what they're trying to show you with that. So that's something else, that it's not something that's said, it's something that's implied. And a lot of people, I don't really think, look at it like that. So when you look at the all the political stuff, it is important because if you look at any wars, there's so much politics going into it. Star Wars, it's got the word wars in it. So of course there's going to be politics. They talk about politics in the original movies too. However, the problem is the original movies, it's almost completely a dictatorship. You do have the Senate in the beginning, but by the time you get to the second movie, episode 5, it is a complete dictatorship. It is completely run by the governors and Emperor Palpatine. So there's a difference in the way that they go about talking about the politics, but they mention it. They mention how the Emperor has seen to it that the Galactic Senate is no more, and they talk about that. But the whole point is, it's such a political movie. It's a political trilogy, because you have to see how the emperor came about, how he was able to conquer and just completely take over the galaxy without really this big, which did have a big war, but he was able to get his fingers into the galaxy before even the Clone Wars, and how the Clone Wars was that kind of final nail in the coffin. But in my mind, yes, the prequels get a lot of hate, and I believe it's very undeserved. Especially when you start talking about stuff like the Clone Wars. I'm not talking about the Clone Wars series. I'm talking about the way that they were portrayed between episode 2 and episode 3. The imagery that we have, the imagery that we get for episode 3 specifically for the Clone Wars, is phenomenal. I mean, that was something that when I first watched the movie, this was the first Star Wars movie I watched. And I think I talked about my whole experience with Star Wars before, but I watched this movie in the theater not knowing anything about Star Wars, and that's what intrigued me so much. And it was not, I definitely was intrigued more by the whole tear between Anakin becoming a Darth Vader, but no, the imagery for the war and everything, and how big it was, that was something that really drew me in. So, but going into the prequels, where do the prequels deserve the hate that they get? I believe where they messed up on the prequels was that the prequels should not have been 3 movies. I understand that Lucas wanted to make everything a trilogy. There's an importance in the trilogy system. But the prequel, what it should have happened with the prequels is, instead of having episode 1, episode 2, and then in between also having the original mini Clone Wars thing, which, I mean, doesn't really get brought up anymore, but I loved it. That was a huge part of my childhood. But those mini the mini Clone Wars things, and then episode 3, having that, it really wasn't enough to build character. You're talking about a time span that goes, Anakin's 9 years old in episode 1, and I believe he's got to be somewhere around like 23, 22, somewhere around there in episode 3. We're talking over 10 years of story, and you're trying to push that into 3 movies, and it doesn't work out that way. And I think that's the fall of the prequels, is that basically we have to turn Anakin into Darth Vader so quick. We ended up getting something a little bit better when we got the Clone Wars TV show that went between 2008 to, I believe it was 2014 or something like that. I've watched it quite a few times now. I didn't watch that because by the time that came out, I was a little bit older, didn't really want to watch a cartoon. But with the Clone Wars is what explains all the growth that these characters go through. It explains, okay, it's not just Anakin having these emotions towards Padme and their marriage that's going to pull the strings and turn him into Darth Vader and the fear of losing her. It's other stuff. Like we have the introduction to Ahsoka Tano. And I'm going to probably get into that a little bit more into another video, just because it's a little bit foggy the way that the Jedi describe Padawans and who gets Padawans up until they ended up making the Clone Wars. But my point is that series, that TV show, explains what they should have really explained. They should have been another movie or at least an actual TV show between episode 2 and 3, but there wasn't. And I think that's the problem. Um, but I've already gone on too far with this video, guys. So um, if you liked it, definitely hit the like button. And if you have any comments, if you disagree with me or anything, definitely leave a comment down below. And feel free to subscribe. Like I said in the past couple of them, I've got quite a few videos lined up. I've got a lot of content I want to go over. So if you hit that subscribe button and the bell button, you'll get notified when a new video comes out. So, but again, guys, thanks for watching.